Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems. Hey, I'm Tom Gozy. Another week we're down in the basement because there's a lot of things we got to do in the basement before we go upstairs. This week we're getting started on the heating system, and we're over here in the corner for a reason. You stay with us and you'll see why. Like I say, we're down in the basement again because we're starting work on the heating system this week. First thing you start in with the heating system is an oil tank. We took out the old oil tank because it was rusty, it was ready to fall, the legs were all rotted away. We've got a new Roth oil tank which we're going to set over here in this corner. Dilemma, oil tank has to sit on concrete. We actually have a concrete floor at this end of the basement, whereas where the old oil tank was all mud. I decided it made more sense to just put it on this end where it's already concrete, but it wasn't quite level. So we've just leveled up a pad here where we can put the Roth tank. Once that sets up, we're going to go out through the side here. This is the front of the house, and we'll be good to go with oil. So oil is a good first step when you're putting an oil heating system in, that we have a good oil tank. We got the Roth tank here, and next week that'll all be hooked up. So that's cool. I just poured this a little while ago. I screeded it out. I checked it with a level multiple times, and it's level. So that's all right. But we have got, this is the, man, I hit my head so many times down here. This is another project. We've got a new boiler we're putting in with new heating radiant panels. Oh man, this is great stuff over the other end of the basement. So here it is, the whole heating system. This is it. This is the Biasi B103 boiler. This is a three-section boiler. We've got 1, 2, 3 cast iron sections here. The boiler looks a little different than a lot of boilers you see at home shows and whatever, because it does not have its insulated jacket on yet, because we're still plumbing. And I'm slowly hooking up all the pipe and the wiring and everything. But this is what's underneath the jacket on a boiler. It's a cast iron boiler. What a cast iron boiler has, what's unique about this is it has a lot of extended surface, a lot of fingers and ribs inside here. So the oil burner, which mounts here, fires into the bottom, and it passes through passageways, have a lot of extended surface to pick up the heat. Not a lot of water in this boiler. It's a cold start, low mass boiler, and what that means is it gets the energy out of the water, out of the fire as quickly as possible into the water, and we want that to be upstairs. We don't want to heat a lot of stuff in the basement, especially this basement, because it's this basement. We want the heat where we are, not in the basement. So low mass means that we don't have a lot of standby losses, and we get the heat where it should be. Okay, so we've done that. You can see I've started to do hookup here. The oil burner is in the box over there. That's going to mount on here on the end. This is a door that swings open. We'll open it at some point. I'm not ready to do it right now. Got 4 big threaded rods here that hold the sections together, and these are also the hangers for the insulated covers that go on the unit. And on the front of the unit we've got what we call a tridicator. Tells you temperature and pressure, and that's obviously in. We'll have to swing around the back here to take a look at some more plumbing. So this is the back side of the boiler. You can see here these dimples here. That's indentations where there's castings with the extended surface inside the combustion chamber for heat exchange purposes. Backside is where all the connections are. Most of the connections, I should say. We've got a pressure relief valve here, which is a safety that blows off if everything malfunctioned. This will relieve steam that's formed. The main tapping here, we come up with an elbow. We go into what is a low water cutoff. This is just a big probe, a sensor that tells the boiler whether or not there's water in the system. If for some reason the system was breached and all the water drained out, this would shut off the power to the unit, which would shut off the oil burner, which would keep it from overheating and exploding. Pressure relief valve is the other safety that will keep it from overheating and exploding, because we don't want boilers to explode. That's why we have these safeties. This is the third safety. This is a high temperature cutoff. So just a brass probe here that measures the temperature, and when it gets up to temperature, it shuts off. So all safety devices. This, after the low water cutoff, we have a ball valve here. You cannot have a shutoff in between the boiler and the low water cutoff, and we do not, but we have one on the other side, so we can isolate the boiler if we're doing some service to it. Down at the bottom, we have some more tappings. We have a boiler drain, just a drain so we can empty water out of the boiler. There's a plug here, big 1.5-inch one, which would be for plumbing if we needed it, but we're not using that. I don't have the plug in there yet. And then off this other tap, we have another shutoff valve right here, and I have another boiler drain. The reason is that this will not be an automatically filled system. I think we're going to antifreeze it. So when I go, then this goes to the plumbing. But if I shut this valve and I pump water in, say here, I can fill the whole system and empty it out here. So this is just a simple way. This is what I would call a charging assembly. It's a way for me to introduce antifreeze into the system by pumping in one valve and exiting it out the other one and letting things fill. You'll see when that happens what we do. So we got shutoffs again in a lot of places. We're now going to extend these two pipes up to the ceiling where we'll hook in the rest of the plumbing system, which is fairly simple. We've got radiant panels, which we'll look at in a second. We've got 6 panels. We're going to put them together in series loops of 2. So we'll have 2, 2, and 2, which are 6 panels. And very simple, single circulator pump. We'll talk more about that when we look at them. So the plumbing is not that exotic. We will have a separate water heater tank off of the boiler at some point in a week or so, and when we do, we'll have that. We're going to plumb that in ahead of time. We'll just keep the electric water heater on till that's hooked up. So the plumbing is fairly straightforward at this point. We just need to do a little bit more of it. Overhead here from the old furnace, we have another safety here. We've got a shutoff switch which will turn the system on and off for service. And this is a fire device. This will interrupt the circuit. This is just a little sensor that will burn. If it gets too hot up here, that'll pop and shut the unit off. So that just goes up in there. And we're going to move that over so it's right over the oil burner. Right, it used to be over the oil burner. Oil burner used to be right here. But we needed to have the flue, which is here, come off the back and go into the chimney, which is right here where the plastic bag is. And so we'll need to extend that out and get a couple of connectors in here. Haven't done that yet. I just started plumbing this yesterday, and we go round and round in terms of what happens first, but we're getting there. Another day or two, this will all be plumbed up and ready to go. In the meantime, I think we need to go upstairs and take a look at the radiant panels, which is the other end of the heating system. This obviously takes the oil from the boiler, from the oil tank into the burner, heats the water in the boiler. We got hot water. It's got to go upstairs. We got to get the hot water to heat us somehow, and that's what radiant panels are all about. When we come back, we'll take a look at radiant panels and all the fun that they'll bring us. Okay, we're back, and we're upstairs now. We're looking at radiant panels. This is a Biasi radiant panel, Biasi boiler downstairs. Makes sense we have a Biasi radiant panel. This is a 3 foot wide, 2 foot high radiant panel. It puts out, I don't know, around 4,500, 4,300 BTUs. It's what we call a double panel. We've used these before. I love these panels. They're nice and compact. They look good. But this is called a double panel for a reason. There's 2 water jackets, one on the back, one on the front, and then in between we have fins. And what will happen is, in addition to radiating heat off to the front of you, you have convective heat coming out the top of the unit. And being such a tall device, we have the luxury of getting a lot of usable energy from relatively low temperature water. So we can take this panel and run it at lower temperatures if we want to or need to, and we will get very effective heating. These are this is European technology. If you've been to Europe, you see these all over the place. And they're really simple to hook up. I've got a smaller unit here just so I can move it around. The bigger ones are a little bit heavier. These are made out of steel, so they tend to be a little weighty. We've got two fittings right in the center here. It's all sort of pre-plumbed. These are compression fittings, so this is ready to hook up plastic tubing to. It would mount on the wall, and on the back of the unit are these mounting brackets. So you can mount off of these. These are just for protective purposes for shipping. You can mount off of these brackets, but Biasi, since I last used these, now has a new mounting system, which I absolutely love. I just want to make sure that don't fall over. And this is pretty slick. I'm gonna remove this. Now this is heavy, and let's show you the mounting system first. We've got these brackets that mount into studs, and we just pick a spot on the wall where there's a stud. And I found studs here with my stud finder, and it has big lag bolts that we put in. And then I've got just a couple of sheetrock screws just to keep this plumb. And there's a little notch down at the bottom, and that notch mates up to this bottom edge of the panel as opposed to these brackets. And that makes it very simple to mount the unit, because I could take the unit, these brackets go where the stud is, where it's strong, and the panel goes like that. There's a little push button on the side here. Let me show you. The push button, you push that down. Tell me that's not slick. That is good engineering. Whoop. Let me just slide it over. It goes right over the grill there. Miss the Man, she's mounted. There's a lock screw there, so we tighten that down. That is solid up against the wall. That is so sweet. I remember when we did our first Biasi panels, we were locked in to this spacing. And if there was no stud in this, where that spacing was, it got a little tricky to mount them, especially bigger panels tend to be heavy, and we obviously need to have something substantial to mount them to. This is far superior mounting system, and man, I just love the way that goes together. What else is great about these units is we have built in to the unit on this end a valve. This is a bypass valve. Now there's a lot of plumbing in addition to the water jackets on these things. That's all built in here, and all this plumbing gives us a lot of flexibility. We do not have to come off the bottom of the unit. We're coming off right here in the middle. You see some very messy person drilled a couple of holes here for running the tubing up through. We could come off the ends if we want to. We don't have to though. And so we've got this bypass valve, and what happens is you can have just a on-off type screw knob on here. This little plunger in the middle will actuate the valve, but what we're going to put on this is a thermostatic control head, and it goes from snowflake, which means it's off basically and cold, to number 5, which is really hot. And this just screws on. Let me put it back this way. Just goes right over the valve assembly, and you screw that on. Once that's done, once that's mounted there, we now have this as a zone in and of itself. This controls whether heat comes out of here or not. So if this room is up to temperature, this valve will shut off heat coming out of the panel and bypass the unit. So what I can do as the plumber who's hooking these things up is, let me just put that way. I can put 2 of these in series. So this is the kitchen. We're going to put one in the bathroom, one in the kitchen, and we're going to plumb the 2 in series. So I have 2 plumbing connections for 2 panels, whereas other ways you might have to have 4 plumbing connections. So I simplify the plumbing. So we're going to do 3 loops of 2 panels each. So this is 2. We've got the front room and the living room be another 2. We've got 2 upstairs room be another 2. And the bypass valve will allow us to heat both panels, and if one is up to temperature, one room like the bathroom gets hot because it's a small room, this room is big, it takes longer to heat up, it'll bypass that loop and heat this, bypass that room and heat this room within this loop. It's a very simple plumbing system. We can only do up to 2 in series because there's a lot of pressure drop internal here. We've got relatively small pipe, but that's great. I'm very happy as a plumber to be able to just run 2 in series. It saves on pipe, saves on heat loss in the basement, and it makes the system relatively efficient. So it's a very elegant way of doing things. Additionally, we can run this being a radiant panel and being this high and having a lot of convection taking place. We get a chimney effect in here. The higher the panel is, the more chimney effect you get. So we can use low temperature water to get a fair bit of heat out of this device. What that means is this is an elegant system to use with an outdoor reset control. We can have a control that modulates the water temperature that's feeding this. Day like today, we're middle of October. It's relatively warm out, but it's going to be a little nippy a little bit later in the day. We can run with cool water into the system and just trickle a little bit of heat out, but we get a good convection through that low temperature by the fact that this has got a very high, it's almost like a chimney stack, so it works very well. And then when it's hot, when it's cold out, the water runs hotter and we get a lot of heat coming out. So this will heat this very big room all by itself. And I've oversized the system, so we could probably have gone with a smaller unit, but with the bypass thermostat, we won't overheat the room. And that makes a big difference here to have that unit with the bypass thermostat on here, so we can do everything we want to do in terms of making the room comfortable but not overheat, because it doesn't make sense to have this big heating system, a big heating system and overheat. It costs you more money. So this will give us very fine control through the entire building and a good economy too. So the only other thing I need to show you on this, another piece of hardware built in, is there is, because this is a lot like an old-fashioned radiator except it's new technology, we have an air purge device here, a little bit of a vent at the end there. We turn that screw when we're filling the system up with water and we exhaust air until the entire panel fills up with hot water, and then we just shut it off and she's good to go. So we're going to be doing that pretty quickly because the system is going in very fast and it's going to get very cold very quick. We've already had frost, so you knew that. Anyway, we got to take a break here because I've got to get back to plumbing, and we'll see what we do next. You know what that is? We're down in the basement again. That's a petrified, that's a moldy spider, moldy dead spider. I told you this was a fun basement. We're a week later for wrapping up this show. We got a lot of stuff done in that time. We've got our Roth oil tank set up in the front corner of the house where there was a concrete slab. I have leveled it up. I've poured a little pad here. Got a piece of rubber and a piece of plastic over the pad to protect the saddle that holds the tank from rusting because it's wet down here, and it will be wet for some time, I'm sure. But anyway, we got 275 gallons of oil here in a Roth tank, which is a good thing, all done to code, which is even a better thing because there was nothing up to code before in terms of the tank. The tank was rotted. The oil line actually went down into the mud in the floor, and if you look over on the side here, you can see the blue conduit, which goes all the way around the perimeter of the basement in the darkness to the oil burner. That's code. Oil line has to be contained in a conduit that will contain any leaks and also protects the copper from being in contact with concrete and mud and water, all the things that would make the copper potentially corrode and fail. But there's more over on the other side of the basement where I don't have to stand in the glaring light. And this is the other part of what we've been doing over the past week. The boiler, you remember the boiler being bare, just the core unit. Now we've got all the jackets on. We've got an insulated cover on the front here. I can pop that right off. So if I were a serviceman, I take the cover off. There's bolts that hold a door. This whole oil burner assembly swings out for easy cleaning. We have a flexible oil line right here tied to what's a very high filtration filter. And it's pretty simple stuff. It's very nice, very user-friendly for the service person. And it's fun to put in, and it looks really smart. And of course, it's well built and all those other good things. But what I really like about it is how service-friendly this is. It's got a, I do have to put a clamp here to hold this wire, because the idea is that you need to you unplug the oil burner right here when you service it, so that wouldn't come on while you were servicing the unit. So I do need to put a clamp there. We just got this done a day or so ago. So with everything done, we got the low water cutoff. We got power comes from the Firematic, which is overhead. Let's just run through it all again. That's a safety device if there's a fire. That will shut the oil burner off. There's a service switch up here. The feed comes down to here. This is a low water cutoff. If there's no water in the boiler, the unit won't come on. After that indicates that there's power going to the unit, we go to a high temperature limit, which is just the control for turning the burner on and off presently. We don't have the outdoor reset control on here just yet. Cameraman's trying not to fall into the muddy canals that I have on the floor here. Another service switch that's just real convenient to get to for turning the unit on and off. Of course, the power to the oil burner. Up top here, we have a circulator pump, a pump relay which interfaces with the thermostat, and a circulator that goes on and off, and it's fairly simple. So this thermostat calls for heat, makes the oil burner come on and the circulator pump come on. And then our branches now, we've got a stub here for the water tank, which is not yet in place. Then we've got 2 branches that are currently hooked up for the 4 panels we have. This will be for the upstairs loop. This would be the feed. There's one on the other side, which would be the return. And of course, here's the PEX tubing that goes to the panels, all plumbed, just with shut-off valves. Very simple. We've got isolation valves. We could have had isolation flanges on the pump, just so we could either way, we could shut the pump off and disconnect it, shut the water off so we can pull the pump out if it ever has to be serviced. The whole idea here is we want to make sure everything is serviceable and easy to service. If it's not, it's going to cost more money when it does come time to service something, because everything has issues at some point in its life. So we need to plan for that. And a little bit of planning will save the person down the road a lot of aggravation and save you, the homeowner, a lot of money. The Biasi boiler is I can't show you running now because it's not calling for heat, because the house is warm, which is what we want. It's got a Riello burner, which has the new Riello burners have actually got some insulation in them, so they're very silent. And we will be down here doing more in upcoming weeks, some related to heating, some related to a lot of other stuff. So you'll get to hear this in action. But right now, I just wanted to show you the finished installation, which came out very nice. Here's our oil line. You see where it's in mud and the rest, it is all protected. It's away from water and away from mud, which is a very good thing. So this is the finished heating system, and it is doing a fine job of heating the house, and we have a few moments left. Let's go upstairs and look at some of the finished panels now with everything on them. So back upstairs, here we are back at the kitchen radiant panel again. Something a little different from a few minutes ago though, when we last left the kitchen. The pipes are in, this is hooked up, and if you see underneath here, we've got our compression fittings in place. No leaks, no dribbles, no nothing. And over here, if we look up here now, we've got our there's a point. Well, oh yeah, you can't hear. When it's running, you can hear it. You can hear it shut off the water flow and bypass. Right now, it's not running, so, or you would have heard the oil burner running, duh. But anyway, so this is hooked up. This is in the loop with the bathroom. Let's take a quick peek at that. We got time? Oh yeah, we got to look. Okay. Okay, in the bathroom panel, a little different installation in that Mr. Fix-It had done the tile floor and hadn't thought about the panel. So we actually came up through the wall here. You can see I just drilled the holes, and I've got to fill those holes. But we've got this is the beauty of PEX tubing, and we can bend it and do these kind of yanks. If I did that with copper, I would have at least driven myself a little bit crazy, or crazier than I might already be. But this panel is right underneath a towel bar, which is a good thing because now the towels will stay nice and warm. We can actually get a towel bar panel. They make a panel that is specifically for hanging towels on, but I didn't want to do that in here. I wanted to put a panel in, so here it is. And so this and that kitchen one we just looked at are one loop, and then the front room and the living room are another loop. So that's the 2 loops that I showed you downstairs. We've got 2 more panels to go upstairs, which we'll show you on another show, because it's going to be some logistics of getting the tubing up, and you'll see how simple it is running the tubing through a really tough path. But that's the beauty of working with PEX, beauty of working with radiant panels, and of course the Biasi panel goes to the Biasi boiler. It all works out really well. We're looking forward to seeing what kind of energy costs, heating costs we're going to have in this building with this new heating system now. And we're just in time for heating season. I think I'll say it's officially started. Certainly by the time you watch this show, we'll be well into it. So a lot more stuff to see. If you want to look at Biasi stuff, you can see where at the end of the show. It's qhtinc.com, qhtinc.com. Also, if you talk to your heating contractor, this stuff is available at Bangor Pipe and Supply right in Bangor. and there's other distributors through the state of Maine as well. Very high quality material, very affordable price, good efficiency. Stuff we like to see when we do old houses over. Anyway, we're going to leave you for now. If you have any questions, give us a call on the radio. You see we're at the end of the show, and this is a fun project. It was a quick project too. I spent more time plumbing downstairs than I did putting these in. That amazes me. See you next time. Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems.